Hey, boy. Hey. How you doing, buddy? Hi. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna shovel the deck here, buddy. Go here, buddy. Hey guys, how you doing? A lot of you have sent me messages. You said, "Hey, you have to do a video on this thing we just witnessed." Marty chewed my hat. I know, but you got to do a video on the Trump impeachment trial. I'm gonna impeachment. Let me use the word "quote unquote" trial. Okay, and I know you guys are gonna immediately when this topic is started, you're gonna think, well, what's your opinion? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Should he be guilty? Should he be not guilty? Let's step back for a minute. Because that's not what this is about, okay? It has nothing to do with someone being found guilty or not guilty, because they're always not guilty, right? This is the way the system works. We did not witness a trial. There was no trial. What was it? Let me, like a scam, a sham, a circus, a paid political statement. It was a campaign. It was a bunch of politicians campaigning. That's what we witnessed. A campaign event for Democrats and Republicans. You know what a trial is? This is a trial. I'll explain to you what a trial is, and then we can talk about what actually happened in the Senate. A trial is when someone does something wrong. Let's use an example here. Let's say there was a regular schmo who had 85 million followers on Twitter over the past couple of months was sending out tweets talking about how the election was stolen, and then that guy helped fund and organize a rally in Washington, in front of the White House, and he sent out tweets that said, "Come to the rally on January 6th. It's gonna be wild." And then that guy went to the rally, and then that guy gave a speech where he talked about how the election was stolen. He says, "We should walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and we're gonna go to the Senate." And that guy did that. And then let's just imagine that events unfolded exactly like we saw unfolded in the United States. And what happened is exactly what happened. What would have been the outcome of that? Within 15 minutes, the FBI would have arrested that guy that did that, and that guy would be taken to a police station, and he would be charged with 42 different crimes. And then that guy they would tell him, you have the right to remain silent, you can get yourself an attorney, blah, blah, blah. And then the guy would say, well, I'm a vegan, and I'm not happy with the food I'm receiving here in jail, so could you please change the menu? And then the guys, the FBI agents would say, well, yeah, we got a good idea. You don't like the food here? Okay, we'll put you on a plane, and we'll send you to Guantanamo fucking Bay. And then you can eat whatever the hell we give you there, because when you're there, we don't have to worry about your menu. And then they would subject him to about 2 years of legal interrogation off U.S. soil, and they would find out all the accomplices that he was with, and everyone he knows, and everything he posted ever on social media, and every computer that he had, and they'd fill him with all sorts of truth serums and drugs, so that he would spew out all the information he's ever accumulated about the event. They would arrest another 142 guys that were associated with him, and then they would bring him back to the United States after about 2 years. But they would think, well, we can't bring him back to Washington to try him for the 47 charges that we've laid on him, because Washington doesn't have the death penalty. We'll bring him back to Louisiana or something, because if we find him guilty there, we can execute him. And then they would have a trial, and they would find him guilty on 43 out of the 44 charges, and then he'd be in an orange suit, jumpsuit, and they'd bring him somewhere, and he'd be on death row. That's what would happen if there was really a trial, right? What we witnessed over the past little while was not a trial. It was a campaign ad. It was where a bunch of politicians just got together and just took turns making statements that they know would be put on, if they were Democrats, they would be rerun on CNN and some more left-wing media sources. And most of the Democrats used words like humiliating, and it was very emotional, and it was very heartbreaking. And they gave speeches that would be shown on their social media and their left-wing media, and they know that their followers would like to hear words like heartbreak and those type of words. And then there were Republicans that used words like it was a scam, and it was a witch hunt, and it was unconstitutional, and those sound bites would be shown on places like Fox and right-wing networks. And they each took turns. And at the end of the day, all the Democrats voted to impeach and find guilty the Republican president. And all the Republicans, except for a few, voted not to impeach and not to find guilty the Republican president for whatever reason. And then it all wound up. And now it's over and we can all move on. Justice was done. There is no justice. Okay, politics has nothing to do with justice. All you got to do is look at the statements of the top Republican, a senator, Mitch McConnell, who explained it perfectly and eloquently, just a genius bit of politicking there and campaigning. And I'm not just going to spout and rant about it. Let's actually, word for word, hear what he said. Let's go inside it, and I'll read you what he said. Okay, we're inside. Oh, that's good. Ooh, it's cold out there. Okay, let me read you his statement word for word here, all right? January 6th was a disgrace. American citizens attacked their own government. They used terrorism to try to stop a specific piece of democratic business they did not like. Fellow Americans beat and bloodied our own police. They stormed the Senate floor. They tried to hunt down the Speaker of the House. They built a gallows and chanted about murdering the Vice President. They did this because they had been fed wild falsehoods by the most powerful man on earth, because he was angry he'd lost an election. Former President Trump's actions preceding the riot were a disgraceful dereliction of duty. The House accused the former president of, quote, incitement. That is a specific term from the criminal law. Let me put that to one side for a moment and reiterate something I said weeks ago. There is no question that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of that day.
The people who stormed this building believed they were acting on the wishes and instructions of their president. And their having that belief was a foreseeable consequence of the growing crescendo of false statements, conspiracy theories, and reckless hyperbole, which the defeated president kept shouting into the largest megaphone on planet Earth.
It is not his endorsement of remarks in which an associate urged trial by combat. It was also the entire manufactured atmosphere of looming catastrophe, the increasingly wild myths about a reverse landslide election that was being stolen in some secret coup by our now president, referring to President Biden. I defended the president's right to bring any complaints to our legal system. The legal system spoke. The Electoral College spoke. As I stood up and said clearly at that time, the election was settled. But that really just opened a new chapter of even wilder or more unfounded claims. The leader of the free world cannot spend weeks thundering that shadowy forces are stealing our country and then feign surprise when people believe him and do reckless things. Sadly, many politicians sometimes make overheated comments or use metaphors that unhinged listeners might take literally. This was different. This was an intensifying crescendo of conspiracy theories orchestrated by an outgoing president who seemed determined to either overturn the voters' decisions or else torch our institutions on the way out.
Unconscionable behavior did not end when the violence began. Whatever reaction he says he meant to produce, by that afternoon he was watching the same live television as the rest of the world. A mob was assaulting the Capitol in his name. These criminals were carrying his banners, hanging his flags, and screaming their loyalty to him. It was obvious that only President Trump could end this. Former aides publicly begged him to do so. Loyal allies frantically called the administration. But the president did not act swiftly. He did not do his job. He didn't take steps so federal law could be faithfully executed and order restored. Instead, according to public reports, he watched television happily as the chaos unfolded. He kept pressing his scheme to overturn the election. Even after it was clear to any reasonable observer that Vice President Pence was in danger, even as the mob carried Trump banners, was beating cops and breaching the premises, the president sent further tweets attacking the vice president. Predictably and foreseeably under the circumstances, members of the mob seemed to interpret this as further inspiration to lawlessness and violence.
This is heavy stuff.
Later, even when the president did half-heartedly begin calling for peace, he did not call right away for the riot to end. He did not tell the mob to depart, even until later. And even then, when the police officers bleeding and broken glass-covered floors, he kept repeating election lies and praised the criminals. In recent weeks, our president's associates have tried to use 74 million Americans who voted to re-elect him as some kind of human shield against criticism. Anyone who decries his awful behavior is accused of insulting millions of voters. This is absurd. 74 million Americans did not invade the Capitol. Several hundred rioters did. And 74 million Americans did not engineer a campaign of disinformation and rage that provoked it. One person did. I have made my view on this episode very plain.
It's pretty heavy stuff, right? Now listen to this. But our system of government gave the Senate a specific task. The Constitution gives us a particular role. This body is not invited to act as the nation's overcharging moral tribunal. We are not free to work backwards from whether the accused party might personally deserve some kind of punishment. He's finished speaking out of his mouth now. He's finished speaking out of his mouth. And now it's time for him to start speaking out of his ass. We cannot find the president guilty. This Senate's role is not to try the president. We are not free to work backwards from whether the accused party might personally deserve some kind of punishment. Okay. Because he's no longer the president, right? That's the loophole now. If the president were still in office, I would have carefully considered whether the House managers proved their specific charge. If he were still in office, I would have taken this seriously. But okay, let me compose myself. Hold on. It's just too much for me. He continues. By the strict criminal standard, the president's speech probably was not incitement. Now, this is true. It's very difficult to prove incitement. It's very difficult to prove intent. It's easy to prove something happened, but it's always difficult to prove intent. That's why there's always plea bargaining, and when someone is charged with murder, or let's have a different example. When someone drives a car and he has an accident and he hits people and kills some people, you could charge him with murder, but you probably won't get a guilty plea or a guilty verdict on that, because he just has to prove that it wasn't his intention. I didn't intend to hit those people. It was an accident. So it's not murder. It's a manslaughter. It's not even that, because I wasn't intending on hurting anyone. I pressed the brake pedal and the car lurched. It wasn't me. It wasn't my fault. It happened so fast. I didn't know what I was doing. I was confused, right? That's all he has to say. And then all of a sudden, he's found guilty on the charge of dangerous driving, which happened to kill 12 people when he veered off the road and smashed into a crowd of, right? Okay. Intent is difficult. So this is true. He goes on. However, in the context of impeachment, the Senate might have decided this was acceptable shorthand for the reckless actions that preceded the riot. So he said on a strict criminal standard, incitement may not have been, if the president is charged criminally, it would be hard to find him guilty of incitement, which he might be charged criminally in the future. So he's already covering his ass. But in the case of the Senate, it might have decided that this incitement was acceptable shorthand for the reckless actions that preceded the riot. But in this case, the question is moot, because the former president is constitutionally not eligible for conviction. He's not eligible. He's not the president anymore. If we would have had this vote, this trial before he was a private citizen, then it might have been okay. But it's moot now, because I shut down the Senate for 2 weeks. I wanted to wait till after the inauguration, so now it's moot. It's moot now. It's moot. I like to talk out of my mouth and my ass. There is no doubt this is a very close question. Donald Trump was the president when the House voted, though not when the House chose to deliver the papers. Brilliant scholars argue both sides of the jurisdictional question. The text is legitimately ambiguous. Blah, 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 blah. In the end, he says, we have no power to convict and disqualify a former office holder who is now a private citizen. Well done. Well done, Mitch, the worm McConnell. You've succeeded. It's unbelievable, right? This guy, because this is what happened, right? Close the laptop here. He voted no, not guilty, because this is politics, okay? He's got careful numbers and a staff that tells him about things, and he has a certain percentage of people that are his base in the state that he is from, and he cannot alienate his base. And his base happens to be the very, very right-wing segment. About 35% of his support comes from people that will never ever read this, that will never ever hear this, that will never ever hear his what he said. They'll only get their news from a snippet on Facebook, or a 5-second clip or headline on Fox News that says Mitch saves the day, or on some more right-wing news outlet where it says Super Mitch crushes the Democrats, and they'll go right on, right? Or his base, one of them will wake up in the trailer park and he'll say, well, I usually get my news from Joe, because he knows that guy with the truck that's on Facebook. Hey, Joe, what? Yeah, Mitch sure showed him. Yeah, we got him. So he's appeased that 32% of his base, but then he doesn't want to alienate the more moderate people in the party that may, in 4 years, be responsible for the next candidate, right? So he has to, this big long speech is to let them know, I considered it very carefully. I know what's going on, and it's irreprehensible, just terrible. But my hands were tied. The point was moot, because the circumstances and the Constitution, and I very carefully weighed, blah, blah, blah. So those people, the 20 or 30% of his potential votes from moderates, he has to appease them. And then, mark my words, Mitch, the worm, in 2024 is going to be one of the candidates, right? He wants to be president, and he wants to please everyone. And so when you want to please everyone, you got to speak out of your mouth, and you got to speak out of your ass. So guys, just try and step back and remove yourself from whether you thought that Trump should be guilty, or whether you thought Trump should be innocent, or whether you're Republican, or whether you're Democrat. It doesn't matter, right? It has nothing to do with it. There was no way in hell that there would ever be a guilty verdict, because it wasn't a trial. It was just a campaign ad. That's what this is all about. It's just politicians campaigning. And the big losers is us, right? There was never any doubt that nothing would happen. And it's just the way it works. It's just the way it works. And I'm trying to, in this video, let you know that there's no opinion. I don't have an opinion of whether should he have been guilty, should he have been because that's not even it wasn't even a possible outcome, a guilty verdict. It was impossible. What we can say is that what happened on January 6th was terrible and disgusting, and no one will be held accountable for it, except for the guys that are getting arrested now, the idiots, the morons that actually were in the Capitol doing what they did. And that's another Klaus Kellerman point of view video. I hope you guys stuck with me for the whole video. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it, or if you did not enjoy this, don't. Click dislike if you didn't like it. If you liked it, click like. Turn on notifications so that you'll know when the lunatic posts again. And I'll shut up now, because I had 3 cups of coffee making this, and I'm just wired. I'm wired, I tell you. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. I know. Marty, he chewed my hat. Marty! Where'd you go? Oh, there he is.